The massive war room of the Galactic Council had never been this quiet before. General Vextar stood frozen in front of the giant holographic display. His 8 tentacles were shaking as he stared at the images coming from Earth. The blue and green planet looked peaceful from space, but what he was seeing on the surface made his blood run cold. Human soldiers were running through a frozen wasteland that stretched as far as the eye could see. The ground was covered in thick white snow and ice that sparkled under a pale sun. The temperature readings on the display showed -40°C. This was cold enough to kill most known species in the galaxy within minutes. Yet these humans were not just surviving, they were training. Admiral Cloth moved closer to the display, her scales turning from their normal dark green to a sickly pale blue. She had seen many battlefields in her long career, but nothing had prepared her for this. The humans were carrying heavy packs on their backs and running in formation through the deadly cold. Their breath created white clouds in the air, but they kept moving forward without stopping. Captain Hyung-woo Park stood calmly in the center of the room. His human military uniform was simple compared to the fancy armor and decorations worn by the alien generals around him. The council members whispered to each other in their native languages, but their voices were filled with fear and disbelief. Wu had been invited to speak to the council about Earth joining their defense alliance. The alien leaders had thought humans would make good support troops for their armies. They had not expected to discover that humans were something far more dangerous than they had imagined. General Vextar finally found his voice, but it came out as a weak whisper. This cannot be real. No intelligent species would choose to enter such deadly conditions. The cold alone should kill them instantly. How are they still moving? The other council members nodded in agreement. They all came from worlds with controlled climates where the temperature never changed more than a few degrees. Their soldiers trained in safe, comfortable facilities with every possible safety measure in place. The idea of deliberately going into such harsh conditions seemed like madness. Captain Hyun-woo looked at the terrified faces around him and spoke in a calm, steady voice. We call it Arctic survival training. Every human soldier must complete this course before they can join our military forces. We train in extreme cold because war does not wait for good weather. Admiral Cloth stepped forward, her voice shaking as she spoke. But Captain, surely your soldiers use special equipment to survive in such conditions. Advanced heating systems, protective suits, emergency shelter. Shinwoo shook his head. The only equipment they carry is their basic military gear and emergency supplies. They must learn to survive using their own strength and training. We believe that comfortable training makes weak soldiers. The alien generals exchanged worried glances. This was not what they had expected when they invited humanity to join their alliance. They had thought humans would be useful as support troops or maybe engineers. Now they were beginning to realize they might have invited the most dangerous predators in the galaxy to their peaceful council. General Vextar cleared his throat nervously. And your female soldiers, Captain, do they also participate in this training? Surely they are not expected to endure such hardships. A small smile appeared on Hyun-woo's face. You should meet Sergeant Bo Young Kim. She holds our current record for solo mountain survival training. She spent 30 days alone in the Himalayas with only basic supplies and a knife. She says the cold and isolation help her think more clearly. The room fell silent again. Several of the alien council members began to sway in their seats as if they might faint. The idea of spending 30 days alone in deadly cold was beyond their understanding. In their military, soldiers were never left alone and always had full support teams. Show U.S. more demanded Admiral Cloth, though her voice was barely above a whisper. She needed to understand what kind of beings they had agreed to work with. Hyun-woo activated another section of the holographic display. This time it showed a vast desert with rolling sand dunes that stretched to the horizon. The sun blazed overhead and heat waves rose from the burning sand. The temperature gauge showed 52°C, hot enough to cook meat. Human soldiers were marching across this burning wasteland in full combat gear. They moved in a steady line across the dunes, carrying their weapons and equipment. The desert sun beat down on them mercilessly, but they kept moving forward without complaint. This is our desert warfare training facility, Hyun-woo explained, pointing to the display. Staff Sergeant Min-ho Lee is leading that column. He specializes In desert combat operations last month, he completed a solo survival mission across the Sahara Desert with only 2 liters of water. He says the heat makes him stronger and more focused. Several alien generals began to make choking sounds. General Vexstar tentacles had turned completely white with shock. In his species, such extreme temperatures would cause immediate organ failure and death within minutes, yet these humans seemed to thrive in conditions that would kill most galactic species instantly. But Hyenwu was not finished. He activated another display showing dense jungle training grounds where humans learned to survive in environments filled with poisonous plants, dangerous animals, and diseases that would kill most species within hours. Then he showed them mountain training where soldiers climbed peaks so high that the thin air would suffocate beings who had evolved on normal worlds. The humans in the displays moved through these deadly environments like they belonged. There they seemed comfortable in places where most aliens would die within minutes. Their faces showed determination and focus rather than fear or panic. "We have a saying on Earth," Hyenwu said as he watched the shocked faces around him. "Train hard. Fight easy. We make our training harder than any war could ever be. Our soldiers must be ready to fight anywhere in any conditions against any enemy." The alien council sat in stunned silence. They had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years and had seen many warrior races. The Mortek Empire was considered the most dangerous military force in known space with their enhanced soldiers and advanced weapons. But now they were looking at something that made even the Mortek seem weak. General Vexstar voice was barely a whisper. "Captain, what you are showing us is not military training. This is deliberate torture. No sane species would put their people through such suffering." Yunwu looked directly at the alien general with calm, steady eyes. "General, we do not see it as suffering. We see it as becoming stronger. Every challenge we face makes us better soldiers and better humans. Our planet taught us that survival requires strength, and our military training continues that lesson." Admiral Cloth realized with growing horror that the humans were not just tough soldiers, they were something far more dangerous. They were a species that had learned to thrive in conditions that would kill everything else in the galaxy, and now they were offering to help defend against the Mortek invasion. Council members began to whisper frantically among themselves. They had thought they were recruiting auxiliary forces for their upcoming war. Instead, they had discovered that humans were more dangerous than any enemy they had ever faced. The question now was whether having such allies was a blessing or a curse. As the meeting continued, the alien generals began to understand that their peaceful galaxy was about to change forever. The humans had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same again. 3 days after the shocking meeting with Captain Hyenwu, the Galactic Council received the worst news possible. The Mortek Empire had finally launched their long-feared invasion. The first target was the peaceful Zeltron system, where millions of innocent civilians lived in harmony with nature. General Vexstar rushed into the emergency council chamber, his tentacles drooping with exhaustion and fear. He had not slept since the first attack reports came in the holographic displays around. The room showed burning space stations and destroyed planets. The images were too horrible to watch, but too important to ignore. The Mortek have broken through our outer defense lines, General Vexstar announced to the assembled military leaders. His voice cracked with emotion as he continued. "Their warriors are bred for combat from birth. They have cybernetic implants that make them stronger, faster, and more deadly than any natural creature. Our forces cannot match their terrible power." Admiral Cloth entered the chamber with her scales dulled to a sickly gray color. She had been coordinating the defense efforts, but every report brought worse news. The Mortek were not just winning, they were destroying everything in their path with ruthless efficiency. "We have lost 12 entire star systems in just 4 days," Admiral Cloth reported to the horrified council members. "Our soldiers panic when they see the Mortek berserkers charging toward them. These creatures feel no pain, show no mercy, and fight until death takes them. They are living nightmares made real." The alien generals around the table nodded grimly. They had all heard the stories about the Mortek warriors. These were not normal soldiers, but genetically enhanced killing machines that stood 7 feet tall. Their bodies were covered in thick armor plating that could stop most weapons. Their claws could tear through steel, and their cybernetic implants gave them superhuman strength and speed. The Mortek had conquered half The galaxy using sheer brutality and terror, they would attack a system, destroy the military forces, and then give the survivors a choice: surrender completely or watch their worlds burn. Most species chose to surrender rather than face total extinction. General Vextar looked around the table at his fellow commanders. These were some of the bravest beings in the galaxy, but even they were terrified of the Mortok advance. The enemy was moving faster than anyone had expected, and their forces seemed unstoppable. Perhaps, General Vextar said quietly, we should consider the human offer. The room fell completely silent during their last meeting. Captain Hin Wu had politely offered to send human forces to help defend against any Mortok attack the alien generals had declined, thinking their advanced technology and superior numbers would be enough to handle any threat. Admiral Cloth remembered something from their previous meeting. Their captain mentioned combat experience, something about war games where human soldiers practice fighting against each other. This seemed unusual since most species avoided internal conflict. General Vextar activated the long-range communication system. Within minutes, Captain Hyung Woo appeared on the holographic display. The human looked as calm and composed as ever, despite the chaos and destruction happening across the galaxy. We have been monitoring the Mortok attacks, Captain Han Wu said without any introduction. Our offer of military assistance still stands. We can have the first human expeditionary force ready for deployment within 6 hours. Admiral Cloth leaned forward desperately. How many soldiers can your people send, Captain? We need massive numbers to have any chance against the Mortok horde. 1,000 troops for the initial deployment, Hyun Woo replied calmly. They will be commanded by Colonel Jae-min Choi, who has extensive experience in combat operations. He has led forces in every type of warfare situation you can imagine. The alien generals exchanged worried glances. 10,000 seemed like a pathetically small number when facing the millions of Mortok warriors that were rampaging across the galaxy. The human offer seemed generous but ultimately pointless. General Vextar chose his words carefully. Captain, we appreciate your offer, but you must understand that the Mortok are not like the training scenarios you showed us before. These are real predators who have conquered dozens of intelligent species. They are enhanced with technology that makes them nearly invincible in combat. Wu expression did not change at all. General, we have been fighting wars for thousands of years on our home planet. We understand what real combat means. We know how to face real predators and real danger. The Mortok may be strong, but they have never encountered human soldiers in actual battle. But Captain Admiral Cloth protested, they are cybernetically enhanced warriors. Their bodies are more machine than flesh. They have been modified to feel no pain, no fear, and no mercy. How can normal soldiers fight against such monsters? Neither do we, Hyun Woo replied with simple confidence. When we need to, the alien generals felt a chill run through their bodies at the quiet certainty in the human captain voice. They were beginning to understand that humanity's greatest weapon might not be their technology or their numbers, but something far more dangerous: their absolute refusal to surrender or give up. General Vextar tried once more. Captain, the Mortok have advanced weapon systems that can destroy entire buildings with single shots. They have armor that can withstand our most powerful weapons. They move in coordinated groups that overwhelm any defense. Captain Hyun Woo listened patiently, then activated his own display, showing human soldiers in various combat situations. These were not the training exercises from before, but actual battle footage from wars on Earth. This is footage from our recent conflicts, he explained. Calmly, you will notice that humans do not fight like most species. We do not rely on superior technology or overwhelming numbers. We use tactics, adaptation, and determination. Our soldiers are trained to win against impossible odds. The alien generals watched in fascination as human soldiers move through destroyed cities and hostile terrain. They use the environment to their advantage, turning obstacles into weapons and disadvantages into opportunities. Their movements were coordinated but flexible, allowing them to adapt to changing situations instantly. We have faced enemies who outnumbered us 10-1, Hyun Woo continued. We have fought in conditions that should have killed us. We have won battles that every tactical computer said were impossible. The Mortok are strong, but strength alone does not win wars. Admiral Cloth realized that the humans were offering something the Galactic Council had never seen before: hope in the face of impossible odds. Every other species in the galaxy was either fleeing from the Mortek or preparing to surrender. But the humans were actually eager to fight. General Vextar made the decision that would change galactic history. Captain, we accept your offer. When can your forces be ready to deploy? Within 6 hours, as promised. Colonel Jae-min Choi will personally lead the expedition. You will find that human soldiers are different from what you expect. We do not fight to survive, we fight to win. As the communication ended, the alien generals sat in stunned silence. They had just allied themselves with a species that seemed to view the galaxy's most feared enemy as simply another challenge to overcome. The question now was whether the humans' confidence was justified, or if they were about to witness the destruction of 10,000 brave but foolish warriors. The Mortek had conquered half the galaxy through fear and overwhelming force, but they had never faced an enemy that had been forged in the fires of the most dangerous planet in the universe. Soon they would learn what it meant to fight against humans, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The human transport ships arrived at the Zeltron system to find a vision of complete destruction. Burning space stations drifted through the void like broken toys, while Mortek warships hunted down fleeing civilian vessels. The once peaceful system had become a nightmare of fire and death. Colonel Jae-min Choi stood on the bridge of the human command ship, watching the destruction with cold, calculating eyes. His uniform was simple and practical compared to the fancy armor worn by alien officers, but his presence seemed to fill the entire room. The alien liaison officers assigned to work with the humans huddled nervously at their stations. Status report. Colonel Jae-min ordered in his quiet but commanding voice. Lieutenant Daeun Park. His communications officer read from her tactical display. 12 Mortek heavy cruisers currently in the system, sir. They have established complete orbital control over Zeltron Prime. Enemy ground forces are conducting systematic destruction of all major population centers. The alien liaison officer. Subcommander Plick stepped forward on shaking legs. Colonel, perhaps we should wait for additional reinforcements. The Mortek ships are heavily armed and shielded. Any direct assault would be complete suicide for our forces. Colonel Jae-min studied the tactical display without showing any emotion. The Mortek formation was indeed impressive. Their ships were massive and bristling with weapons positioned to cover each other. Weaknesses. Any conventional attack would be crushed within minutes. Commander Jae-min said calmly, show me the current surface conditions on the planet. Plick tentacles twitched nervously as he activated the planetary scanner. The Mortek have set large portions of the atmosphere on fire. Toxic gases are spreading across the continents. The temperature in combat zones exceeds 60 degrees Celsius. There are massive electrical storms from their orbital bombardment weapons. The alien officer expected the humans to realize the complete impossibility of their situation. Instead, Colonel Jae-min nodded with what looked like approval. Excellent, Sergeant Won-shik Kim. Prepare the drop pods for immediate deployment. Standard combat loadout plus environmental survival gear. Sergeant Won-shik Kim, a compact man with old battle scars across his hands, actually smiled. Yes, sir, the troops have been looking forward to some real action. Subcommander Plick eyes widened in complete horror. Colonel, you cannot be serious about this. The surface conditions are lethal to most known life forms. Even if your soldiers somehow survive the initial drop, the Mortek ground forces are dug in with heavy weapons and defensive position. Subcommander Jae-min replied without emotion, my soldiers have trained in conditions much worse than this. We call it Tuesday. The alien officer watched in complete disbelief as the human soldiers prepared for their deployment. Instead of showing fear or concern, they displayed excitement and eagerness. Instead of using elaborate protective gear, they carried simple equipment and basic weapons instead of detailed complex battle plans. They seemed to rely on simple direct action. This is complete madness, Plick whispered to his aide. They are going to die horribly. Down there, Major Sujin Han, the human intelligence officer, overheard his comment. Her smile was as sharp as a blade. Subcommander, you are thinking like prey animals. The Mortek are predators who have always hunted weaker species. They have never encountered humans in actual combat before, but they are enhanced warriors, Plick protested weakly. Cybernetic implants, armor plating, advanced weapon systems. How can normal soldiers fight against such monsters? And we, Major Sujin replied, are the Species that survived ice ages, deadly plagues, and wars that lasted for decades. We are the species that learned to kill creatures 10 times our size with simple tools. We conquered our entire planet using nothing but determination. Enhancement is just technology. We are evolution itself, the first wave of human drop pods launched toward the burning planet below. Sub-Commander Plick watched the tactical display, expecting to see the human life signs disappear one by one as they were killed by the impossible surface conditions. Instead, he saw something that made his blood run cold. The human signals were not disappearing, they were spreading across the planet. Surface, moving through environments that should kill them instantly, heading directly toward the heavily fortified Mordic positions on the planet's surface. The first Mortak patrol was about to learn a lesson that would terrify their entire species. For the first time in their conquest of the galaxy, they were about to discover what it meant to be hunted by something more dangerous than themselves. Private Ji-Hoon Kong crouched in a crater filled with toxic gas, his breathing equipment keeping him alive in conditions that would kill most aliens within seconds. Through his rifle scope, he watched a Mortek patrol stumble through the poisonous wasteland, their heavy armor making them clumsy and slow. "This is too easy," he whispered into his radio. "They fight like they are used to enemies running away." Corporal Dejin Nam voice crackled back through the static. "Intelligence reports say the Mortak have never faced organized resistance. Most species they attack either flee immediately or die within hours." "Their mistake," Ji-Hoon murmured as he lined up his shot on a Mortek warrior. Across the burning continent, similar scenes played out as human soldiers used the deadly environment to their advantage. While the Mortek struggled with toxic atmosphere and extreme temperatures, the humans moved through the wasteland like they belonged. Their Staff Sergeant Minho Lee led his squad through a region where the ground itself was on fire. The flames reached temperatures that would melt most known armor types. His soldiers followed him calmly, their desert warfare training making them comfortable with extreme heat. "Contact ahead," reported Private Subin Park, pointing toward a Mordic fortress built on a ridge overlooking a valley of fire. 15 hostiles, heavy defensive weapons, good elevated positionment. Ho studied the enemy position through his binoculars. The Mortak had built their fortress well, with overlapping fields of fire and strong defensive walls. A direct frontal assault would be suicide. "Subin, can you reach that unstable slope above their position?" The young soldier examined the cliff face, noting the loose rock and extreme heat radiating from the stone surface. "It looks very unstable, Sergeant. One wrong move and the whole slope could collapse." Minho grinned. "Perfect. Take 2 soldiers and get into position when I give the signal. Start the avalanche." The alien liaison monitoring human communications could not believe what he was hearing. "They are using the planet's own instability as a weapon," he reported to his superiors. "They are actually making the deadly conditions work in their favor." Meanwhile, on the orbiting command ship, Colonel Jae-min received constant reports from across the planet. His forces were systematically destroying Mordic positions using tactics the aliens had never encountered before. "Sir Lieutenant Daeyoon Park," reported Captain Dong Hyan, "your company has eliminated the enemy communications center. They used the electrical storms to mask their approach and infiltrate the facility." And Captain Haiwon Kim forces they have captured the main supply depot. "Sir, the Mortak defenders were overcome by toxic gas when our soldiers deliberately breached their environmental seals." Colonel Jae-min nodded with quiet satisfaction. The Mortak had made a critical tactical error. They had assumed that creating deadly conditions would work in their favor. Instead, they had given the humans exactly the kind of environment where they performed best in. The planet's surface war leader Gorth realized with growing horror that his forces were being systematically hunted. His warriors, bred for intimidation and direct combat, were being picked off by an enemy that seemed to thrive in conditions that should kill them. "They are not normal," he growled to his sub-commander. "They fight like demons. They move through poison and fire like it means nothing to them." "Perhaps we should request immediate reinforcements," suggested the sub-commander nervously, but Gorth pride would not allow retreat. The Mordic had never been defeated by any lesser species. "No, we will crush them with overwhelming force. Order all units to converge on the human positions immediately," was exactly what Colonel Jae-min had been waiting for. As the Mortek forces abandoned their defensive positions to hunt the humans, They exposed themselves to the planet's deadly environment without proper shelter or support. The hunters had become the hunted, and the humans were just getting started with their deadly game. The first Mordic patrol never knew what hit them. One moment they were marching through the toxic wasteland. They had created confidence in their cybernetic enhancements and thick armor plating. The next moment 3 of their warriors lay dead in the poisonous mud, killed by precise weapons fire from an impossible direction. War leader Gorth, a massive Mordic warrior enhanced with the latest combat implants, roared angry orders at his surviving troops. Spread out, find these cowards, kill them. But the humans were already gone, melted back into the burning landscape like ghosts. The Mortek warriors, bred for direct, brutal combat, found themselves confused and frustrated by an enemy that refused to stand and fight face to face. Private Jihun Khan crouched in a crater filled with deadly gas, his breathing mask keeping him alive in conditions that would kill most aliens within minutes. Through his rifle scope he watched the Mordic patrol stumble through the wasteland, their heavy armor making them clumsy and slow on the uneven terrain. This is almost too easy, he whispered into his radio. They fight like they are used to enemies surrendering immediately. Corporal Dejin Nam voice crackled back through the static-filled communication. System Command Intelligence says the Mortak have never faced organized resistance before. Every species they have conquered either fled their homeworlds or died within the first few battles. Their biggest mistake, Ji-hoon murmured as he lined up another perfect shot on a confused Mordic warrior across the burning continent. Similar deadly scenes played out as human soldiers used the hostile environment to their tactical advantage, while the Mordic struggled with the toxic atmosphere and extreme temperatures. The humans moved through the wasteland like they had been born there. Staff Sergeant Min-ho Lee led his squad through a region where the ground itself was on fire. The flames reached temperatures that would melt most known types of armor. His soldiers followed him calmly, their extensive desert warfare training making them comfortable with the extreme heat contact. Ahead, reported Private Subin Park, pointing toward a Mortic fortification built on a rocky ridge overlooking a valley filled with burning chemicals. 15 enemy hostiles, heavy weapons emplacements, good defensive position. Minho studied the enemy position through his tactical binoculars. The Mortak had built their fortress well, with overlapping fields of fire and strong defensive walls. A direct frontal assault would be complete. Susada Subin, can you reach that unstable slope directly above their position? The young soldier examined the cliff face carefully, noting the loose rock and extreme heat radiating from the stone surface. It looks very unstable, Sergeant. One wrong move and the whole slope could collapse and bury everything below. Minho grinned with anticipation. Perfect, take 2 soldiers and get into position when I give the signal. Start the avalanche. The alien liaison monitoring all human communications could not believe what he was hearing. They are using the planet own geological instability as a weapon, he reported in shock to his superiors. They are actually making the deadly environmental conditions work in their favor. Meanwhile, on the orbiting command ship, Colonel Jae-min received constant status reports from all across the planet. His forces were systematically destroying Mordic positions using tactics the aliens had never encountered in centuries of warfare. Sir Lieutenant Dayun Park reported Captain Donghayan U Company has completely eliminated the enemy communications center. They used the massive electrical storms to mask their approach and infiltrate the heavily guarded facility. And Captain Haiwon Kim forces, they have successfully captured the main supply depot. Sir, the Mortak defenders were overcome by toxic gas when our soldiers deliberately breached their environmental protection. SEALs Colonel Jae-min nodded with quiet satisfaction. The Mortak had made a critical tactical error. They had assumed that creating deadly environmental conditions would work in their favor. Instead, they had given the humans exactly the kind of battlefield where they performed at their absolute best. And the planet's surface war leader Gorth realized with growing horror that his supposedly invincible forces were being systematically hunted and eliminated. His warriors, bred for intimidation and direct combat, were being picked off by an enemy that seemed to thrive in conditions that should kill them instantly. They are not normal, he growled to his nervous sub-commander. They fight like demons from the deepest hell. They move through poison and fire like it means absolutely nothing to them. Perhaps We should request immediate reinforcements from the fleet, suggested the sub-commander with barely concealed panic, but Gorth's pride and arrogance would not allow any retreat. The Mortek had never been defeated by any lesser species in their entire history of galactic conquest. No, we will crush them with overwhelming brute force. Order all units to converge on the human positions immediately. It was exactly what Colonel J-Min had been waiting for. As the Mortek forces abandoned their defensive positions to hunt the humans, they exposed themselves to the planet. Deadly environment without proper shelter or support systems. The roles had completely reversed. The hunters had become the hunted, and the humans were just getting started with their deadly tactical game war leader Gorth. That is personal guard through a valley filled with burning chemicals. The toxic fumes should have killed any normal creature, but his cybernetic enhancements filtered the poison from his blood. Still, the extreme heat was making his armor systems work harder than design movement. Ahead, hissed one of his warriors, pointing toward a rocky outcrop. Gorth activated his enhanced vision systems, but saw nothing. The thermal scanners showed only the burning landscape and the heat signatures of his own troops, yet something felt wrong. The silence was too complete. Then the avalanche began. Tons of superheated rock came crashing down from the cliff above, triggered by carefully placed explosive charges. The Mortek warriors tried to run, but their heavy armor made them too slow to escape. Private Subin Park watched from her hidden position as the enemy soldiers were buried under the crushing stone. Target eliminated, she reported calmly into her radio. Moving to next position across the continent, human soldiers continued their deadly work. They turned every environmental hazard into a weapon, every obstacle into an advantage. The Mortek had created a hellish battlefield, thinking it would favor their enhanced warriors. Instead, they had given their enemies the perfect hunting ground. Lieutenant Colonel Sumin Park led his battalion through a region where the very air was on fire. His soldiers moved in perfect coordination, using the flames to mask their approach toward a major Mortek stronghold the enemy had built their fortress on, what they thought was the safest ground in the area, but they had not realized that the humans had been studying the geological surveys. The ground beneath the fortress was unstable, weakened by underground chemical fires. Demolition team in position, reported Sergeant Taehai and Kim. Set charges on the support columns. The Mortek defenders never knew what hit them. One moment they were secure in their fortress, the next moment the entire structure was collapsing as the ground beneath it gave way. The few survivors who crawled from the wreckage found themselves facing human soldiers, who seemed to appear from the flames themselves. Back on the orbiting command ship, Colonel J-Min received reports from every sector of the planet. His forces had eliminated over 8,000 Mortek warriors while losing only 200 of their own troops. The enemy was in complete disarray. Sir, Lieutenant Dayun Park announced. Major Hyojun Lee reports that the main Mortek command center has been located. They have established it in the most heavily defended position on the planet. Show me. J-Min ordered. The tactical display revealed a massive fortress built into the side of a mountain. The structure was surrounded by overlapping defensive systems and protected by the largest concentration of Mortek forces on the planet. It would be a difficult target for any normal military force, but Colonel J-Min was not commanding normal soldiers. He was commanding humans who had been trained to fight in conditions that would kill most species. Contact our special operations team, he ordered quietly. It is time to end this. The final phase of the battle was about to begin, and the Mortek were about to learn that there was something far more dangerous than enhanced warriors in the galaxy. There were humans who refused to accept defeat. The Mortek fleet commander, Admiral Krextel, stood before the massive tactical displays in his command center, watching reports that made no sense. His cybernetic implants processed the data over and over, but the conclusion remained impossible. How could 10,000 primitive warriors be defeating 50,000? Enhanced Mortek soldier status report. He growled to his intelligence officer. Admiral, our ground forces are experiencing unexpected difficulties. The intelligence officer voice shook with fear. The humans are using tactics we have never encountered before. They refuse to engage in direct combat and instead use the planet hazardous conditions as weapons against you. Krextel cybernetic eye word as it focused on the planetary display showing the burning surface of Zeltron Prime. Impossible. The surface conditions are completely lethal. The atmosphere is poisoned, the temperature is extreme, and there are constant electrical storms. No species can survive in such conditions, yes, Admiral, but the humans seem perfectly adapted to these deadly environments. They move through areas that should kill them instantly. They fight longer than should be physically possible, and they show absolutely no fear. This last point troubled Krextel. More than anything else, fear had always been the Mordek's greatest weapon. They had conquered dozens of species simply by being so terrifying that enemies would surrender rather than fight. But these humans seemed completely immune to intimidation. Me, the human commander, he ordered. The holographic display shifted to show Colonel Jae-min Choi standing calmly on the bridge of his command ship. The human looked completely ordinary, with no cybernetic enhancements, no armor plating, and no visible weapons, yet something in his quiet demeanor made Krextel enhanced predator instincts scream warnings as if sensing the Admiral's attention across the void of space. Jae-min turned toward the camera. His dark eyes seemed to look directly at Krextel. Through the display, Admiral, he said in a quiet but carrying voice, I believe it is time we discussed surrender terms. Krextel recoiled in shock. How did the human know he was watching? You are surrounded and outnumbered 50-1, he snarled. You have no position from which to negotiate anything, Admiral. In the past 8 hours, my forces have eliminated 15,000 of your warriors while losing only 300 of our own troops. Your ground forces are scattered, demoralized, and cut off from all supplies. Your fleet is powerful, but you cannot bombard the planet without killing your own soldiers. The Mordek Admiral claws extended involuntarily. Everything the human said was completely true, but how could such a small force be so devastatingly effective? More importantly, Jae-min continued calmly, my reinforcements have just arrived. Krextel spun toward his sensor officer. Report immediately, Admiral. Massive human fleet entering the system, 47 ships including several designs we have never seen before. They are moving in formation patterns that are completely unknown to us. On the tactical display, the human reinforcement fleet spread through the system like a school of deadly predators. Their ships were smaller than Mordek vessels, but moved with coordination that seemed almost supernatural. This is Admiral Yoon-mi Cho of the Human Defense Fleet. Came a transmission from the lead human ship. Mordek forces, you are ordered to surrender immediately or face complete destruction. Krextel would normally laugh at such a demand. His fleet had never been defeated in any combat situation, but something in the human admiral voice made him hesitate. There was no boasting, no threats, just absolute certainty. Admiral Cho, your ships are outnumbered and outgunned by our superior technology. Withdraw now, and we will allow you to leave this system alive. The human admiral response was immediate. Admiral Krextel, you made a fatal mistake when you chose to fight humans. We do not surrender, we do not retreat, we do not negotiate with those who slaughter innocent civilians. Then you will all die, Krextel snarled. No, Admiral Yoon-mi replied with calm, absolute certainty. You will. The human fleet suddenly dispersed, their ships moving in patterns that seemed random but were somehow perfectly coordinated. Krextel ordered his forces to attack, but the humans had already vanished, using the system asteroid field and electromagnetic interference to disappear from all sensors. Where are they? He demanded. Unknown, Admiral. They have completely vanished from our tracking systems. But Captain Jun Sco. Lin, commanding the human stealth ship Ghost Wind, was already in position directly behind the Mordek flagship. His vessel, designed for covert operations, had been invisible to enemy sensors from the moment it entered the system target. Their command bridge, he ordered his weapons officer, maximum power, single shot. The Mordek fleet never saw the attack coming. Their massive flagship exploded in a brilliant flash as the human stealth ship weapons overloaded its shields and tore through its armor like paper. Admiral Krextel had just enough time to realize he had been completely outsmarted before his ship became a expanding cloud of debris. Leaderless and confused, the Mordek fleet began to fall apart. Some ships tried to retreat, others attempted to regroup, but the human fleet emerged from hiding like a pack of wolves, coordinating their attacks with deadly precision. Captain Min Jae-yoon commanded the human destroyer Swift Strike as it targeted a Mordek heavy cruiser. His ship was 1/3 the size of the enemy vessel, but superior tactics made up for any disadvantage in firepower. All weapons, he ordered calmly. The human destroyer Weapons struck the Mordic cruiser at precisely the right moment when its shields were rotating. The enemy ship armor cracked and atmosphere began venting into space. Within minutes, the massive warship was drifting. Helplessly similar battles played out across the system as human ships used speed coordination and superior tactics to defeat much larger enemy vessels. The Mortak had always relied on brute force and intimidation but found themselves outmaneuvered. At every turn, Admiral Yunmi Cho watched the battle from her command ship with quiet satisfaction. Her forces were systematically destroying the Mortek fleet using tactics that the enemy had never encountered before. Status report, she requested Admiral. Reports came from all across the system. Enemy flagship destroyed, enemy heavy cruisers disabled, enemy support vessels surrendering in less than 12 hours. The mighty Mordic invasion force had been completely destroyed, the species that had conquered half the galaxy had been defeated by an enemy they had never bothered to study or understand. But the real shock came when the Galactic Council received the final battle report. The humans had not just won, they had won easily with minimal casualties. Using tactics that seemed to turn every disadvantage into an advantage, and across the galaxy, other hostile species began to hear whispers of a new truth. The humans were not just another member of the galactic community, they were something far more dangerous. They were the apex predators of the universe, and they had just announced their presence to every hostile force in known space. The age of Mordic terror was over, the age of human protection had begun. 6 months after the Battle of Zeltron, the Galactic Council chambers had been completely transformed. Where once alien generals sat in fancy chairs discussing careful defensive strategies, now human officers stood at tactical displays planning rapid response operations across the entire galaxy. General Vexstar watched nervously as Colonel Jae-min Choi briefed the council on the latest military developments. The human quiet demeanor had not changed, but his authority now extended far beyond his original rank. He had been promoted to Supreme Commander of Galactic Defense Forces, a position that had not existed before humans joined the Alliance. The remaining Mortok forces have been eliminated from the Andrus sector, Jae-min reported. In his calm professional voice, Captain Wu Jin, Park Battalion completed the cleanup operation in 72 hours. The surviving Mortok warriors have actually requested permission to surrender. Admiral Cloth asked in complete amazement. But the Mortok have never surrendered to anyone in their entire history. They have never fought humans before, replied Major Sujin Han, now serving as Galactic Intelligence Chief. Our psychological analysis shows that the Mortok are fundamentally bullies. They excel at intimidating weaker species but completely collapse when faced with opponents who fight back effectively. The Alien Council members exchanged meaningful glances. 6 months ago, they had been terrified of the Mortok Empire. Now, the once mighty conquerors were fleeing human forces across the galaxy like frightened children. What about the other hostile species? General Vexstar asked. Commander Hyun Kim, the human fleet coordinator, activated the galactic tactical display. The Krellic swarm has withdrawn from the Outer Rim territories after encountering our patrol fleets. The Savage clans have ceased all raiding activities completely. The Void Hunters have actually requested a formal non-aggression pact. They are all afraid. Admiral Cloth realized with growing wonder every predator species in the galaxy is afraid of humans. Fear is a natural response to encountering a superior predator. Jae-min explained matter-of-factly, but we are not interested in galactic conquest, we are interested in lasting peace. This statement would have seemed contradictory 6 months ago. Now the Alien Council understood perfectly that human peace was enforced by the absolute certainty that any aggressor would be utterly destroyed. Sir. Lieutenant Dae-Yoon Park approached with an official message tablet. Priority communication from Earth Command. Jae-min read the message and allowed himself a small smile. Gentlemen, I have excellent news. The Galactic Council has been formally invited to visit Earth for the signing of the new Comprehensive Defense Treaty. The alien generals shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They had heard many stories about Earth, the death world where humans had evolved with its extreme weather, dangerous animals, and unstable geology. The idea of actually visiting such a terrifying place filled them with absolute dread. Is it safe? General Vexstar asked hesitantly. Perfectly safe, Jae-min assured him. We have prepared special environmental suits for your Protection. The ceremony will be held in Seoul, one of our most peaceful cities. What he did not mention was that Seoul was built on a peninsula surrounded by historically hostile neighbors, experienced regular earthquakes, and had weather that ranged from Arctic cold to subtropical heat. By human standards, it was indeed completely peaceful. 3 weeks later, the alien delegates arrived at Earth to find a world that exceeded their worst possible nightmares. The gravity was crushing, the atmosphere was corrosive, the weather was violently unpredictable, and the native life forms were terrifyingly aggressive, yet humans moved through this hellscape as if it were a comfortable paradise. How do you possibly survive here? General Vextar asked in amazement as he watched human children playing happily in a park while a massive thunderstorm raged overhead. We do not just survive, replied President Gu Won-yoon, Earth-elected leader. We thrive and flourish. This world made us strong. It taught us to adapt, to overcome obstacles, and to never give up no matter how impossible the situation seems. The signing ceremony took place in a magnificent hall overlooking the Han River. As the alien delegates carefully affixed their signatures to the treaty, they realized they were not just signing a defense agreement, they were acknowledging humanity's position as the galaxy-dominant protective species. There is one thing I still do not understand, Admiral Cloth said to Jaemin as the ceremony concluded. Why do you help us? You could easily conquer the entire galaxy if you wanted. Why do you choose to protect weaker species instead? Jaemin looked out at the bustling city below, where humans of all ages went about their daily lives in conditions that would kill most aliens within hours. Admiral, we learned long ago that the strongest survive not by destroying the weak, but by protecting them. A galaxy where only the strong survive is a galaxy that eventually destroys itself, but you are clearly the apex predators of the universe. General Vextar observed. Does that not make you inherently dangerous to the rest of us, General? Jaemin replied with a slight smile. The most dangerous predator is not the one that kills everything it encounters. The most dangerous predator is the one that chooses when to kill and when to